Hey guys, Paul here from Meldrum Performance Coaching again. So checking in, we are now up to second one part of what we'll be covering in the seminar on Sunday. So in this episode or this video, I'm going to talk about the movement screen. So this screening protocol that I use has quite a fun little background. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a background how I came about with the screen, where my journey in assessment began, and then how this screen kind of solves all the issues that I found in other screening things, and then also how I use it practically in the real world. So when I started off as a trainer a long time ago with my mentor Gary, he showed me a very comprehensive system of assessment where we'd be taking joints through individual ranges of motion on a table, a lot of orthopedic and qualitative tests for clients. Very comprehensive, very long. It took up to an hour to put someone through an assessment. So we'd be testing a lot of stuff from the Czech Institute, like lower abdominal function, transverse abdominis function, Thomas test, cervical function, a number of different things that would come into play. Not cutaneous zones, didn't do any of that stuff. Myotomes, etc. So a lot of things came up in the assessment. So it gave a very comprehensive view of what someone was doing. And of course, some of those tests, like the TVA tests, aren't really valid. I don't really subscribe to that at all. Haven't for a very long time, at least a decade by now. But a lot of these things I used were very time consuming. And when I wrote the program, it ended up making the programs incredibly complex. Like I'd have an exercise, I'd try and put an exercise to solve every single issue that I found. And after a while of doing this type of assessment, movement assessment, I found that I was giving the same stuff all the time anyway, so there were some very severe commonalities, but the speed in which people were getting better from the assessment in terms of moving better and changing these markers was quite slow relative to what I would want it to be. So from there, I kind of moved more into a movement-based assessment and still kind of assumed the same kind of things that would be going on, which they were to some extent, and the programming became a little bit quicker and easier. And then when I started opening up my first studio with another coach there, I found that taking him through the assessment process, and this is no fault of his own because of the time frame that he'd been a trainer compared to me and the amount of experience, it just wasn't I hate the word, but it wasn't a scalable approach. It wasn't something that we could do together because it would take a long time to go through all those different assessments and all that different kind of stuff. So it wasn't the best thing to do. So then I discovered the functional movement screen at this point in time, went and did the course with Dr. Mark Chang, who's an excellent teacher, and I was a bit underwhelmed by not the teaching, but what the actual movement screen taught us. So the movement screen kind of showed people that they had 7 different movement patterns, and you'd have a score of 3, 2, 1, 0. 3 is perfect, 2 is good enough, 1 is not good enough, 0 means there's pain. And then if there's pain, you send them off to a selective functional movement assessment practitioner for what's called a breakout, where they figure out what's going on. And I didn't really like that, because what happened was when someone was a 1, well, first of all, I was qualified as a musculoskeletal therapist, so unfortunately my qualification wasn't recognized with the FMS. But anyway, what happened when someone was 1 is you just put them through a corrective protocol, which is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And a lot of the exercises targeted a whole bunch of different tissues. Because I remember my business partner at the time, he did the corrective course level 2, where he got a ton more corrective exercises, which led to him doing really complicated exercises with bands, holding a band for a client, applying force in different like reactive neuromuscular training vectors, etc. And I noticed it was good in some ways, but it wasn't helping clients move better that much faster. It was kind of like it would take a long time for those correctives to work. So we'd have a 12-week corrective protocol, which I didn't like. So anyway, one day I may have swallowed some modafinil tablets, which is a smart drug that I got given. I swallowed one. And I then basically thought about the movement screen. I was thinking, this is such an inefficient waste of time. We need to figure out what's going on. And 3 out of the 7 tests are kind of useless. They don't really change the programming, so why would I bother? Like, I'm not going to do them. I'm still going to do core work for clients. I don't care if they can do a unilaterally loaded bird dog. It's not really effective. It doesn't make a difference. The inline lunge doesn't change how I program the lunge. or split squat variation, so I'm going to get rid of that. And there was another one, which the push-up test. I was like, well, I'm not going to train to push up like that. I'm not going to test it. If they're going to be doing core work anyway, it kind of addresses that problem and it makes that test redundant. So what I started to do is I broke down the remaining movement screens that I could find, and I figured out, okay, cool, what are the contributing factors to each of these screens? Like, what are the things that we're looking at? So a very common one is the active straight leg raise. It's done a lot of different fields. It involves you basically, client laying on their back, lifting up their leg, they get a certain score on how high they get. This test can be reflective of someone's actual hamstring mobility, their pelvic position, their rib cage and diaphragm position, their glute function, their reflexive core function as well. All those things and their hip flexor strength. All those things can contribute to having a poor active straight leg raise. Not to mention things like sciatic type symptoms if there's pain, nerve issues, etc. So what I did from that is I worked out, okay, what are tests that I can do for all these particular functions? And then I did that for the remaining movement screens. So I worked out every single little factor that contributed to a movement pattern not working as well, and then basically came up with an algorithm for which order to correct each based on cephalad-caudal arrangements, proximal to distal arrangements, etc., etc., etc. So what I did from that is I got some clients coming in, I did their movement screen, I went through the process, I found out what was going on with them, I did the corrective strategies, and bang, the movement went from a 1 to a 3. So it went from not being good enough to being perfect, from doing one set of corrective exercises. And the reason why it was so effective and so quick was because it was targeted. So it was being able to identify exactly what the problem was, rather than just saying, all right, cool, this is the problem, it's just this movement screen, let's fix that up. That's not a fast or effective way to do anything. So I then went through and figured this out for all the other things. I've eliminated some things over time, but being able to do that, it basically allowed us to scale our movement assessment process, to scale our program design process from that, and to be able to get clients who were really good when they came in for movement, not to waste their time. So spend 5 minutes with them, yep, you're good, let's get you into training and create a training effect, versus clients who were in a fair bit of hurt and figure out their problems and sort them out really, really quickly. And then it was a process to then take them into a training system that would then solidify their improvements that they had, thereby negating the need for any further corrective exercises in the future. So this is that in a nutshell, in a 7-8 minute nutshell, is the MPC movement screen. So on Sunday, guys, I'll be talking about this screen, going through the full process of it, how it all works, all the different ways to deal with it, and all different permutations and algorithms that it produces. And then from there, to be able to work out exactly where you need to go from a programming perspective. So really excited to share that with everyone. Thanks heaps for watching, guys, and stay tuned tomorrow where I talk about programming systems.